In a remote region of northern Italy, there is an abandoned village that appears to have been deserted in a hurry. Homes are destroyed, personal belongings are strewn across the ground, and several people appear to be frozen in time, forever. Welcome to today's episode. Today we are going to tell you about a village that vanished overnight, taking 300 people with it. If this sounds like the premise for a horror movie, then you're not alone. And if you want to watch the whole thing right now, click here. We know that you do. But before you leave us to go watch that, stick around because we have some more interesting facts about this haunting site for you. The Italian government refers to the empty village as the ghost town of Italy. That's pretty self-explanatory. But what makes the site so eerie is the fact that we don't know exactly why it was abandoned. There are theories, but no one knows for sure what caused 300 healthy people to run away from their homes in the middle of the night, leaving everything behind. We'll get into these theories in just a bit. In order to fully appreciate this creepy story, though, you need to know a little bit more about the village itself. The name of the village is Vigna di Santa Vittoria, and it's located in the province of Vercelli. This is near the Swiss border. The village was first mentioned in historical records in 964 AD. It was quite a large settlement. By 1708, it had 121 inhabitants, but it wasn't until the early 20th century when the population boomed. By 1921, the population reached 322 people. At this point, the village had a school, 2 water-powered sawmills, and its own train station. This all changed, however, with the construction of a new highway nearby. In 1970, the highway was completed and a new tunnel was constructed through the mountain pass close to the village. This made traveling through the area much easier, but it was the beginning of the end for Vigna di Santa Vittoria. As we said, the village was small. It was sandwiched between a steep mountainside and a valley. It didn't really have enough space to expand. So as traffic increased in the area, the residents of the village were met with noise and air pollution from passing vehicles. They also had to deal with a rise in accidents. Eventually, they began to feel that their homes were constantly being threatened by the highway and the tunnel. This caused many of them to sell their homes and move elsewhere. But there was another problem. Throughout the entire region, farming was becoming less viable. Many people simply couldn't make a living off of farming anymore. So those who hadn't already left the village decided to look for work elsewhere. All of this resulted in a massive decrease in the population. By 1980, only 140 people remained. 2 years later, that number dropped to just 95. And this brings us to the year 1989. On the morning of March 1st, the residents of the neighboring town woke up to find their friends and neighbors gone. Their houses were completely empty. Some items were left behind, like food on the tables, dishes in the sink, and clothes on the beds. Outside, animals were found roaming the streets. They belonged to people who had vanished without a trace. As soon as news of this bizarre disappearance reached the authorities, they launched an investigation. However, this was hampered by the fact that no one knew exactly what to look for. Everything appeared to be normal. The cars were parked in the parking spots outside the houses. Toys could be seen on the playground. You would never have guessed that a mysterious event had taken place here just hours before. Residents of the neighboring towns conducted their own investigations. They searched the surrounding woods and mountains, but no one could be found. This led them to believe that all 95 villagers had likely died. Perhaps they had been poisoned or struck down by some sort of disease. After a few weeks, the police even conducted psychological autopsies of the empty homes. These revealed nothing unusual. When the dust had settled, the best theory anyone could come up with was that all 95 people had somehow left town and moved somewhere else. But where? What evidence did the police have to back up this claim? Well, for one, every single house was unlocked. This suggests that the people didn't need to rush to leave. They probably had plenty of time to look for somewhere else to live. Secondly, investigators discovered that most of the residents had withdrawn large amounts of cash from the bank in the weeks prior to their disappearance. This meant that they likely had the money necessary to start a new life elsewhere. Finally, they had discovered the presence of a cult in the area. No one was sure whether the cult had kidnapped the villagers or convinced them to join them willingly. The truth is, they never found any evidence that supported this theory either. And this is where things take a turn for the strange. Just over a month after the town was found to be abandoned, a man visited his vacation home in the village. He was staying at the home while he worked as a geology professor at a university. Upon arriving, he noticed that several trees had been cut down since his last visit. One of these trees was very important to him, as it held great sentimental value. He decided to gather some of the wood and preserve it. Several months later, he returned to the village and built himself a small hut. He used the wood from the tree as the foundation. From this point forward, the village was no longer referred to as the ghost town of Italy, but instead as the ghost town of Krakow. The man, Professor Paolo Bertero, became obsessed with the idea of discovering what had happened to the residents of the village. As time went on, his colleagues noticed that he became increasingly reclusive. His behavior became unpredictable. At times, he would go days without speaking a word. Other times, he would suddenly burst into energy and begin asking a barrage of questions about anything related to the village. At other times, he would gaze out the window in a trance-like state for hours on end. All of this led them to believe that the professor was losing his mind. Then one day, his body was found lying on the tracks of the abandoned train line near the village. He had been hit by a train and killed. Was this suicide? Maybe. But it also left a lot of questions unanswered. What had he uncovered in his research? Why was he so obsessed with solving the mystery? Unfortunately, his research notes were never found, but this didn't stop others from continuing his work. In the years following the professor's death, more and more tourists began visiting the village. It quickly turned into a popular destination for thrill seekers. To this day, it remains an active crime scene, and the case is still unsolved. However, there are many who believe that the reason for the abandonment was much more mundane than some paranormal phenomenon. They say that the residents of the village simply learned that they could make more money elsewhere and decided to leave. Yes, they may have left a few too many things behind, but it's not unheard of for people to suddenly pick up and move. As far as the seemingly random destruction of property goes, that can easily be explained by vandals. It's possible that the people didn't necessarily abandon the village, but rather they sold their homes and decided to burn them down so no one could buy them and renovate them. We'll let you decide what you think happened to the 300 people who vanished from the village. Now it's time to make your voice heard. Head down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts on this mystery. Did you enjoy this video? Then click here to watch this one.